Good. I'd like to welcome members and officers to this evening's Southern Rural meeting, and also welcome to anyone who is deciding to watch online. Before the meeting begins, I'd like to invite the committee members and scrutiny manager to explain how the proceedings work.
Thank you very much. Please note that the meeting is being streamed live on the Council's YouTube channel. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit on your desk. Please wait for the chair's invitation before you begin. Please can I remind you that the normal procedure rules in respect of debate and speaking times will apply. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone units. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room, and the results will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Members and officers are asked to wear masks when standing or moving around the room or the building, and masks can be removed whilst seated. Are there any questions before we start? No, thank you very much.
Thank you. I have apologies for absence from Councillor Barnard and Councillor Bishop. Do I have any other apologies? Councillor Terry Tyler, can we note Terry's apologies, please? And is that okay? Minutes. I'd like to propose that we take as read and approve as a true record of the minutes of the meeting of the committee held on the 24th of June 2021. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Lisa. Are there any comments? Councillor Strong?
Yes, I wanted to make a comment about one of the grant applications we did at the last meeting. And this was for the Kimpton Cricket Club. And if you remember, the Kimpton Cricket Club came to our meeting and they made a presentation. They were asking for £1,500. However, Councillor Barnard decided that he wanted to up that amount to match it. So it was matched to an application we received from the Offley Recreation Group, because they'd also had a lawnmower. And that was the proposal he made. It was seconded. It was voted by the committee. I didn't support it because I believe that applications should be treated on their own merits, and we shouldn't be giving one organisation the same as we've given another one just because it's the same item that they wanted to buy. But the item that concerned me is I actually went back and looked through the previous grant application we had made, and the grant application was not for £2,500 that we previously awarded. It was for £2,000. So I think there's a learning here for you, Chairman, that we do need to involve the officers, because I think we could have had that information given to us by Claire Morgan about the previous application, so that we wouldn't have been led to believe that the application had there should have been should have been given a like amount to another organisation, because clearly in the minutes it was only because I went back to look at them, we'd only more than 2,000. And also the officer recommendation on that application was for 1,500. I don't dismiss that we can't change the recommendation from officers, because we do like doing that as a committee, but I do think we need to have accurately the information if we are looking at it. And certainly it wasn't 2,500. So I think we just need to note in the minutes that the correct amount of money that had been awarded, because it is here, that the grant funding, it does mention that it was to be that it should be done like for in a like way.
Thank you, Councillor Strong. Claire, are we happy to, going forward, as Councillor Strong said, have that information? And William, are we okay to note that in the minutes, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I just respond?
Of course.
I just wanted to add that it would, unless I was asked prior to the meeting, I couldn't have looked up how much another organisation has had. And secondly, each application is assessed on its own merits. So to argue that because one organisation has had a certain amount, that another organisation should have the same amount isn't really relevant at the end of the day. But the committee, the majority vote was to up the grant. So that was
An argument that was given in the debate was because we had, as a committee, awarded Offaly 2,500. We should give Kimpton a similar amount, but we had not given get it around the right way, Offaly 2,500. We know again do. That's the point I'm trying to make. Thank you.
Your points will be noted in the minutes, and we will consider that going forward as a committee. Thank you, Councillor Strong. Notifications for other business. I don't have any other notifications.
I still need the assent of the committee to approve the minutes.
Right. Can we take a vote? All those in favour to take the minutes as read with the amendments from Councillor Strong? Please use your buttons to vote. Have we all voted?
Thank you, Chair. That's carried.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Chairman's announcements. Welcome to those present, particularly the speakers and members of public here to join us this evening. Welcome back to seeing each other face to face. It's lovely to see you all in person. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. Moving on to the public participation, and we have Natalie Barton-Pye from Offaly Allotment Association. Welcome, Natalie. Over to you.
Yeah. Hello, I'm actually going to start this presentation. So my name's Lucy, and Natalie and I are both part of the fundraising subcommittee for Offaly Allotment Association. And we submitted a grant asking for some funds to get running water installed on the site. So just to start off, I want to say good evening and thank you so much for having us here tonight. And just wanted to give you a little bit of background about the association and the site. So the allotments in Offaly have been around for quite a few years. In their current location, they've been there for about 3 years. Previously, the plots were managed by the landlord, which is PFP, Pugton Farm Partnership, I think it is. And they liaise directly with all the tenants. Earlier this year, they approached us, the plot holders, and asked if we would create an association. So we manage the plots and we pay a lease. And so we became responsible for maintaining the site, collecting the rent, and making sure everything was maintained and safe on the site. So that's how we came into being as an association. And that's how we started to fundraise in order to be able to develop the site. So the grant we applied for is for £5,449.70. And this would allow us to get running water installed, which is really one of the basic requirements, I think, that all people expect of an allotment site. So I'll hand over to Natalie now just to talk us through the grant in a bit more detail.
Hiya. So currently our plot holders do not have any access to running water. So this isn't such an issue during the winter months. We do have water collection facilities that we each have on our own plots. However, we do not have a source of water that is communal actually on the site, which during the summer months is a rather large issue because you just can't collect enough water or store enough. So if successful, the grant would be used to spend on installing running water to the allotment site. Currently, people are actually having to bring water in from their own houses. So we're having to bring in water generally in a car because you need more than you can carry per day. I know myself personally, last year I was bringing in 50 or 60 litres of water and I was having to put it in my car and drive it over, which is ridiculous because I live across the road, but I couldn't carry it. So we currently have when we sent in the application, we had 29 plots. We now have 31, as some of our larger plots have actually been split into two. We have approximately 35 people and their families. One of the plots that we have is for a school. So that'd be really beneficial for them. They get to see how your food is grown, etc. And yeah, I should pass you over for a bit more of the.
Yeah. So we did some rough calculations about what the water installation would mean in terms of CO2 emissions saved. So we calculated roughly that it could save around a tonne per year, which doesn't mean a whole lot, but what that equates to is the same amount of CO2 which is captured by around 50 trees in a year, which is a lot. We're also concerned because people who don't have vehicles can't get water to their sites and they can't enjoy the allotments in the same way other people do. And while we're fortunate to live in a relatively well-off area around Hitchin, there are pockets of deprivation and there are people at the site who live with low income, don't have vehicles, and we've actually supported at least one of them to access the site by giving him a bike. So we are part of the community. We want to build the community and support people to enjoy the countryside that we're so fortunate to have nearby. So this water installation will be a really big part in making the site attractive to new people, but also just allowing everyone to enjoy it. Okay.
Thank you both for presenting to the committee. We will be debating this. Does anyone have any questions of the speakers? Councillor Strong.
Yes, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to look at my back. Yeah, just a couple of questions on this. As you mentioned, the allotments had moved from their previous site to the new site. So was there water on the previous site, the old allotments? You can't answer that. You also mentioned, thank you, Neil. Either that or our speakers have got very gruff voices suddenly.
Apologies, I'm the chair of the allotment association. We basically had a choice to take it on.
Neil, can you just stick the microphone on in front of you? The little one that says speak.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Yeah, apologies, I'm the chair of the allotments association. Basically, we had to take it on because as a devolved management thing, because if we didn't, the owners, if you like, Building Farms Partnerships, were just going to turn it into a meadow. And it is such a community resource. We formed a committee and we took over ownership on the 1st of October. The problem you have is, and it was the same on the other allotment, which was moved because there have now been developments on their garden fields, was the fact that in the summer, if it's really dry, although this year we've had sort of staggered weather, as you know, you just don't get any crops and they will die off, particularly if you're planting new things. So it's essential. The main cost is the laying on of the water by the water company. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Did you have another question, Councillor Strong? Yeah, I thought so.
My next question. I just wondered what the fees were that you, the allotment owners, or you call them owners, but they were paying for their plot or half plot.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
When it goes red, you can speak.
Okay, sorry. So it's £18 a year for half a plot, and it's £30 for a full plot. And the plots are really big, so you get a lot for your pound.
I'm read again. That kind of concerns me because normally allotments are managed by parish councils. If there is a parished area, if the area is not parish, then it's managed by North Herts District Council. So I did look on the website for our allotments, which are always well utilised and have waiting lists. And the fees for a full plot are £150 a year, unless you are over 60 or you're on benefits or whatever, and then it's half price at £74, and a half plot is £74. And again, if you have a discretionary, that drops to £37. So my first concern is that as an organisation for allotments, it concerns me that you're not actually asking the going rate for what the allotments are. And, when I'm looking at, in your funding, you've only got joint funding of £400, which was raised for a quiz night. Exactly what the sort of funding of your organisation is.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you. Just in terms of the kind of cost to the plot, people renting the plots, we can't charge more because there is no running water, and there's also no security. So the first thing we would want to do as a committee is to be able to raise funds in order to have a gate and running water, so we could actually charge a little bit more. However, I think as a committee we are also keen to make sure that these plots remain accessible. There are people who have plots who are old OAPs, they are from with low incomes, they've got families. We would like them to enjoy it as well. So we would like to increase the rates a little so that we can maintain it, but we can't do that at the moment.
In addition to this, from the fundraising point of view, when we submitted this grant, we had only just really formed, and at this point in time, we weren't so sure of what we were going to be able to do in the way of fundraising. I can say that we do have a quiz night actually planned for tomorrow night, which is fully booked with 60 people coming. We also have already booked in a Christmas market. So we have currently 17 stall holders coming. There'll be mulled wine, there'll be Christmas music, songs, all that kind of thing. We have face painting, everything like that. We also have a race night planned in January. And in addition to this, we are looking at probably a bingo night and possibly a casino night as well in the coming months. So from what was on here to where we are now, this was a couple of months ago now, so we hadn't planned in as much as we have now.
If I can just add to that, we've also secured a grant from the Parish Council for £500, a contribution. Essentially the fundraising we're doing at the moment and the grants we're applying for will enable us to mobilise this site so that we can make it sustainable long term.
On that point, can I ask, when did you get the confirmation of the £500 from the Parish Council, and what was that to go towards?
So that was a discretionary contribution. So it wasn't allocated to any specific part of the development. I don't remember the precise date, I'm afraid.
I have Councillor Nash and then Councillor Strong again.
Oh yeah, no, it's red, isn't it? Thank you. So, and apologies again. I'm going to have to put my back to you now. And I was just wondering, because there's a couple of points. First of all, so on this, you're asking for 5,449, and then it's got joint funding £400. Is that to a previous quiz night? So I feel awful turning my back. So was that the previous quiz night, the £400? Right, so right, okay. So is that £400 coming off the amount 5,449? What you asked?
So the 5,449, that is specifically for the water installation and for the actual, so the water coming off the road from Affinity, and then the water supply within the allotments, because it's quite a vast area, so you need multiple troughs. In addition to that, we are fundraising towards getting a gate installed, etc. So the money that we are specifically asking for from yourselves is for the water installation.
Oh, okay. Asking for the full 5,449. Yeah, and I'm just wondering, because you've obviously got quite a few things planned, but you're not wanting to put any of that money towards the water. Is that right? Is there any way you could put, because it's a lot of money, isn't it?
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
It's not that it doesn't have to be.
Can you make sure your microphone's on? Sorry.
There we go. It doesn't specifically all have to come. We're more than happy to supplement it or and we will continue to fundraise, because if possible, we would like to keep the prices lower, because it's a community based, this is a community effort. So if we can keep the prices for the allotments lower, then.
There are several other costs, obviously, that we're liable for in addition to the lease, which is £300 a year flat, regardless of how many plot holders there are. So there's also insurance and maintenance. So we have to maintain the hedges and the kind of communal grounds as well. So that is, we're also fundraising to cover that.
Oh, thank you. A couple more points. I was just wondering, I think Councillor Strong would probably say the similar thing. Have you thought about having a tiered band of costs for different, so you kind of have a concessionary rate for those on low incomes, and perhaps people that aren't on low incomes pay a bit more for their plots?
I mean, that's definitely something we could look at in the future. I think, I mean, that's something like that would have to be based on trust, obviously, because we have no way of means testing people. That doesn't mean it can't happen.
Just an aside, I've done a lot of fundraising myself, and I didn't find the bingo night was as fruitful as, for example, a quiz night. So just a bit of experience there.
Thank you, Councillor Nash. Councillor Strong.
Yes, sorry, it's me asking all the questions. It's all right. Have you actually asked the Pilkington Estates, who you're leasing it, of whether or not they would chip in some? I mean, it's trying to find all the money and the funding. Have you? I mean, I take my hat off to you for all of the fundraising. That if I turn around, then my microphone's not on. We have to sort this room out. This is just not right. So again, the fundraising, yeah, fantastic list of events that you're organising. I'm sure you'll be very successful within them. But it's also, I mean, to find this amount of, it's a lot of money. It is an awful lot of money that you're asking this committee for. But it's just knowing what other avenues you've explored. I mean, you've talked about £500 from the parish council. That's very generous of them, and I'm sure if you talk nicely to your county councillor, he might have some of his locality budget, because I've seen in an email that he might be happy to support this. But there are other fund people to talk to, like the Pilkington Estates, if they'd been approached and what they were saying on it. And just I don't know. It's a big project. I think I'll probably leave it there. But if you've approached them and asked, or even asking Affinity Water if they would help you.
I can respond to that. Thank you. Yeah, so we did approach Affinity Water on two fronts. Firstly, because they used to have a community fund that could be applied for. They no longer run that. During COVID, during the COVID pandemic, which obviously is ongoing, but the initial stages of it, they turned that into a COVID relief fund. So it's not something we can apply for anymore. They also wouldn't offer a discount. In terms of PFP, yes, we've approached them and they agreed to provide us with some troughs, not funding, but troughs that we could use to reduce the amount we have to spend on the installation.
Well, if anyone wants to have a look at my paperwork, every question that Councillor Strong asked was then written down. So I think between Councillor Nash and Councillor Strong, they've probably exhausted our questions. Are there any other questions from other councillors? No? Councillor Tandy.
Yeah, mine's really quick. And I think you might have just said it, but would you consider, if you were to consider an incredibly less amount, what would that be? Because I think it's a really fantastic cause. And I think that particularly with the trend of organic food and eating healthy, I really, really think allotments are a really good cause. What would you consider? Thank you.
Gosh, this is negotiations, isn't it? Well, we would be grateful for any contribution this committee can make. I think it is going to be challenging for us because we are a small team, of volunteers to fundraise a significant amount But if we could get half or, 3/4, 2/3, that would be such a huge help. And it would also mean that we could get this in place before next summer, which would be great, because we are slightly worried that new plot holders that we've managed to get interested through a lot of like comms and social media and engagement may be really disheartened if they lose another crop, and then we'll lose them again. And that could actually threaten the site full stop, because if we don't have plot holders, we can't pay the rent. So yeah, half, 2/3 would be fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for answering our many questions. And we will be discussing it later in the meeting at the debate. You're more than welcome to stick around and hear what is said. Okay, moving on. We have Wymandley Parish Council, and we have the parish clerk, Sharon Long, here to present. Sharon, over to you.
Sorry, I'm not Sharon.
Well, my paperwork has definitely misinformed me. I'm going to look at the people to my right and hope they're going to fix this. I have Sharon Long on mine. Can I swap with you? Thanks. Right, let's try this again. Let's rewind and try this again. We have Wymandley Parish Council, and we have Councillor Dr. Rebecca Rich-Dwitt, and I probably can't pronounce that either. So I'm just going to pass over to you and turn my microphone off.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm Rebecca Richards-Jewett. I'm a parish councillor. Is it not?
Microphone up.
Oh, is this better? Okay, I'll get a bit closer as well. Okay, sorry, thank you. Yes, I'm Rebecca Richards-Jewett. I'm a parish councillor for Little Wymandley, and I'm also the chair of the council's environment group. So I agreed to take on the task of investigating the cost of purchasing and installing a new defibrillator for the parish, and seeking grant funding for this purpose, as the parish council does not have the finance itself to achieve this. It has other competing funding priorities this financial year, including ones that have arisen as a result of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, and has just £12,584.50 in reserves, most of which is earmarked for a specific unrelated purpose. So we are asking the Southern Rural Committee for a grant of £2,225 to purchase and install a defibrillator in the centre of Little Wymandley. The parish council will then be responsible for ensuring it and paying for its ongoing maintenance costs. So the breakdown of this is the purchase of a defibrillator, unlocked heated cabinets with an information backboard, a signage pack and delivery from Community Heartbeat Trust for £1,925, plus the installation cost of £200 and the setup of a managed solution partnership for £100. So this money will be spent on the purchase and installation of a tier 1 defibrillator. In other words, one that suits the community or the untrained user situation. It's going to be installed on the outside wall of Wymandley Baptist Church, which is on Stevenage Road, which runs through the centre of Little Wymandley. I think in our application it said it was going to be on the Bucks Head public house, but that is no longer going ahead because it's a listed building and consent would be required. And the Baptist Church is central and easily accessible with car parking facilities, and access is 24/7, and they have been approached and have agreed in principle to the proposal. So we found various quotes for the defibrillator, but following research with other Hertfordshire parish councils that already have one, we felt that the defibrillators offered by Community Heartbeat Trust on a managed solution partnership offer the council the best value for money. So we think the need for a fully accessible defibrillator within the parish has been again highlighted by the events at the Euro 2020 football matches, and proximity to these life-saving devices can help save the life of someone experiencing sudden cardiac arrest. So no one organisation has the legal responsibility to provide a defibrillator for use by members of a community, but given the need to be able to access one quickly, if someone is having a cardiac arrest, either at home, at work, or visiting others, it makes sense that this is done on a small geographic scale, such as by the parish council. And we consider the health and welfare of our parishioners will benefit from having a fully accessible defibrillator, and it could well save lives. At the moment, the village, in the 2017 electoral roll, we had about 1,000 residents of voting age. And the census shows that just over 66% of residents are at working age, with just under 24% being under 16 and 10% being over 65. So we therefore have a high proportion of adults at high risk of having a heart attack. And statistics show men aged 45 or older and women aged 55 or older are more likely to have a heart attack than younger men and women. So there is already one defibrillator within our parish, but it's kind of up the hill in a locked building sort of thing. It's installed inside a sports pavilion at the Little Wymandley Recreation Ground. And accessibility to it depends on the sports pavilion being in use and is therefore limited in time. And it is primarily used by the sports clubs and teams that use the sports pavilion. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I have a couple of questions myself. Whenever we used to have people come to Southern Rural, they always used to either have match funding or they used to show that they put a little bit towards it. Have you had any thoughts to funding or fundraising yourself towards this? And have you approached any other means of grants, i.e. your county councillor?
No, sorry, yeah, that's on. No, we haven't looked into getting part funding elsewhere. I don't believe the county councillor would have enough money to be able to cover all of it. No, but yeah, I can find out more information from our clerk and get back to you about that.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Councillor Nash.
Yeah, I'm sure we've had one of these requests before, haven't we? And there was a charity that particularly, that's it. I couldn't remember what it was. It might be worth trying to approach them. Have you done it already, did you say? Oh, yeah. And the other question is, why is the other defibrillator locked away?
So that's solely by use by the people who use the sports pavilion. So it's, when people are playing football or lacrosse or tennis. And it's under lock and key inside the pavilion. And the pavilion is not in the centre of the parish as well. There's antisocial behaviour risks up there as well, which is why it's inside the building. It's up a hill on a road that you would need a code to unlock a gate to get through.
Social behaviour on that part of the no, I get it.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just on the your friendly county councillor, I did hear from him today, because there is a little bit in the paper, in the comment. The avid readers of the comment will know that the county councillors have got access to get defibrillators, but there's always a big but when you talk to Councillor Fake. He's going to use that for your Little Wymandley, aren't you? Yeah, he's going to use that for Big Wymandley to put in for he's going to put in for Kimpton with that, which is also in his parish. But he was talking that he has got allocation money which he was going to then himself use for Great Wymandley, so that he felt that his Kimpton, his little and his big Wymandleys were all going to be treated. So I know that he's not going to, you wouldn't be successful with the Wymandley for your particular application. I think Councillor Frost did make a comment about often we do see applications that come that usually some organisation has got some little bit of contribution rather than asking us to fund the whole lot. Now, I know if you've only got 1,000 residents, you are a very little parish. Does that mean you couldn't find the money yourself for the installation? If we paid for if the committee was minded to give you the money for the defibrillator itself, would your parish be happy to look at the installation costs?
So yes, the installation cost is £200, which I think would be easier to find than the £1,925 for the actual defibrillator. So yes, even if it meant doing some sort of fundraising or something. No? Yes, so we're resetting the budget now, so we could possibly try and find £200 for the installation.
Also could remind parish councils, they do have this thing that they have a parish precept, so that if they are a little short in their budgets, you always have the option to put a little bit on your budget for a year if you actually do have additional costs, excessive costs on one year rather than others, and which is something that you can always apply if when you're doing your budget schedule. Don't forget, you can put your precept up. But thank you. The generous thoughts that you might be able to find if you're doing some budgeting. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? No? Again, it will be discussed during the debate, and you're welcome to stay to listen. I believe Kimpton Parish Council aren't presenting tonight. They've withdrawn the application, so we'll move on to the grants and community update. And I'm going to look to Claire to hopefully have more correct information than I've been given tonight.
Thank you. Expect me to press my own buttons and everything. Right, thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm just finding my place in the report here. So we've got 2 grant applications to consider this evening. I've just, because at the last minute, literally before I left home to come to the meeting, I heard from Kimpton Parish Council, and they have agreed with Councillor Thake that he will put in the application to the County Council to purchase their defibrillator. I do think Councillor Thake might consider giving a few £100s towards the Wymandley one, possibly, if you ask him. As you mentioned, maybe paying for all of it would be out of his budget, but it's also out of ours. So if we can share the load a bit, that's going to help. So I've just recalculated the finance part, because what's left in the budget is 7,365, and the 2 grants as they've been requested add up to 7,674, which would leave us with a shortfall of £309. So members aren't able to give the full amounts that have been requested because we literally don't have the money in the budget. I don't have anything additional to add to what you've heard regarding the grant applications, and if members and the chair are happy to, I think you could go to debate on each of the recommendations.
Thank you, Claire. Okay, so we'll move on to the debate and we will take them in order as presented. So we'll start with Offaly allotments. Councillor Moody.
Good evening. I may be way off tee here, but I've just gone through the Section 106 money, and for Offaly, there's £3,000 still unallocated. Is that something we can tap into? It says there's 3,000 live still to be allocated to. Hold on. Community. Well, it's being used for community halls with the agreement of the developer. The funding's gone to a canopy, the pavilion at the recreation ground, Offaly Village Hall, children's play equipment, the Elm Tree Community Field. And there says there's a balance of £3,032 left. Is that something we can consider here?
It's something that definitely could be raised with the parish council, and I would be looking at the association to raise that with obviously support from the district council. But yes, if we've had words from the powers that be at the back that it can be looked into, then it's certainly something that should be explored. Councillor Strong.
Yeah, you got there first with the, because everybody knows I'm always looking at those 106 monies. I think for tonight, I think we should defer this, because if we've got to go and look and see whether we can unlock that 106 money, and I know this, it's not what I would call completely pressing, because they don't really need the water until next summer. Also, you'll know, I think if we could ask this to come back to our next meeting, we'll know a bit more about the fundraising that they've been able to do, because the Christmas market to me does sound like a really good money earner as well. And I know you've got lots of other projects, just to know how your fundraising is going, whether we can unlock that money, and also whether or not we maybe push a little bit more on to either Pilkington's or to Councillor Barnard from his locality budget, or even the parish council might be feeling they could be pushed a little bit as well. And then we can perhaps get an update of how their fundraising is, and see then what their shortfall is, and see if we can make it up. I mean, I love the idea, and I totally get that this is something we would want to support, but I think it's the amount, because in asking for the full amount tonight, you're effectively asking us to give you 60% of the budget that we've got, and that's 60%, of our budget to one organisation. When we were only halfway through the year, we'd have spent everything, and that really, we'd have nothing left in our pots to be able to give to other organisations, and a lot of organisations do come for a lot lesser amounts. So I would like to move that we defer it, and I'd like somebody to second me.
Oh, they're fighting to second it. I'll take Councillor Nash, as you did come first. Thank you, Councillor Strong. To be honest, I think you've summed up several thoughts that we've had. I'll tell you where I'm coming from, the same kind of area that Councillor Strong is coming from. Obviously, with the background of this that I raised with a couple of people, this land was put forward by Gladman for development a few years ago, and obviously at appeal they lost. They only have a 3-year lease on this land. So to give them £5,000 with only a 3-year lease on private land, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable spending that amount of public money onto private land when there's no match funding, there's nothing really coming forward. I do think you need to explore other areas. The county councillor has come forward and said that he is willing to put some money towards this now. The parish council, I'm sure if you attended one of their meetings, they would, with the section 106 money that Councillor Moody and Councillor Strong pointed out, they would quite happily come forward with that. Maybe a 3 or 4 way split. I call me old-fashioned, I may be old-fashioned, but I did feel a little bit better supporting community groups rather than giving them full funding for something else so that they can raise money for other projects. We want to help everyone, and as Claire has said, we've only got just shy of £7,500 left. We're going to exceed that if we gave all the money, and we've still got 2 meetings left this civic year. So I will take the proposal and the second from Councillor Strong and Councillor Nash that we defer this until the next meeting, and ask that you maybe go away. I absolutely applaud you, knowing the history of this and that you were going to be moved on to Luton Whitehill. It's great that you're still in the heart of the village, and well done you for setting up your association. We do want to support you. But unfortunately, you probably aren't aware, we all used to get our own little pots of money that we could give within our wards, and funding from government, funding from district council level, it's all being cut. So we want to support you, but in a way that we can we can afford basically, and spread that support across the whole of the southern rural area. So I think what I would like to do is ask that we do defer this to the next meeting, which isn't too long. It's the beginning of December, and that we come back having asked you to explore other ways of funding this and come to us with a definitive financial figure that, you know, X is going to give us this, Y is going to give us this. We've had a great Christmas bazaar, which, by the way, I'm interested in on Facebook because it looks fabulous. And then let's all come together, see what you can bring to the table, see what every party can bring together, and then come with a definite figure rather than maybe half, maybe 3/4. Is that okay? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
can I just add that I will contact you and explain how we can unlock the 106 money, what other funding we can get in place, what you need to do to get money from Councillor Barnard's county budget, and also we can see if we can speak to the parish council to get a little bit more money from them. But we'll liaise.
Okay, can we go to the vote on this? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, George. You are. I'm ever so sorry. Councillor Davies.
I think actually a lot of my thoughts, or at least my sentiments, have already been expressed there. I desperately don't want to not support this because we don't have the money. I really want to help you guys out. I'm an allotment holder myself in another area of the district, and I think they're fantastic and everyone should have one. And I know that there's a lot of things you can do very economically. You can get away without fertilizers and anything artificial like that. There's a lot of really nice organic ways you can do that. But the one thing that allotments really can't do without is water. And I think that knowing how much I use the supply on our site elsewhere, the extra utility that allotments can get from a main supply will be fantastic, sort of many multiples more productive. So yeah, I support deferring until we can find a finance solution to this that works.
Thank you. Can we go to the vote? Everyone can we vote on deferring this to the December's meeting?
Thank you, Chair. That's carried.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and hopefully see you in December. Can we come back to? Okay, moving on to Wymandley. Do we have anyone for the debate on Wymandley, please? Councillor Strong.
No debate, but I'm happy to make a proposal. I'm happy to propose 2,000. I don't know if anyone will second that, because they seem to indicate they might be able to do the installation, but the cost of the defibrillator was 1,925. I will go with that if that's preferred, but I thought I'd just round it up.
If I may, again, for the same reasons that I did question and I did ask of Offaly, I did prefer people coming forward. Obviously, they have made noises that they can raise a little bit of money for the installation. We don't know what Councillor Thate can put in from his county budget either.
He will support Great Wymandley. The full amount for a defibrillator and installation or whatever they needed. They'll do the grant for the Kimpton one.
Mm-hmm.
So that leaves
right
little one. So if nobody wants to second my proposal,
I would propose from the chair that we give them the 1,925 for the defibrillator and the casing, and ask them to find the installation and setup costs. I don't think that's too much to ask. And Councillor Strong has seconded that. Do we have any other comments during the debate? No? Okay, can we move to the vote that we give them £1,925 for the defibrillator and casing and everything else that comes with it?
And that motion is carried.
Okay. Well done. And hopefully that doesn't leave you with too much to do. Just that little bit extra to get it installed. Thank you for coming, but everyone this evening. Please feel free to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting if you would like to. Okay. Moving on to item number 7. We are going on to the fly tipping and environmental crime in the Southern Rural Area, and I welcome Becky Coates and John Marshall to present.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, thank you very much for inviting us to come along this evening to provide you with an update on fly tipping matters within the Southern Rural Area and across the district. As I think we all know, unfortunately, fly tipping has continued to increase, particularly over the last 18 months to 2 years during the pandemic. And certainly in North Herts, we've also seen the increase, and council officers and partners have been working really hard to tackle this matter. I'd like to hand over to Mr. John Marshall to provide a short presentation, and obviously we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Daryl, are you able to put the presentation on screen for everyone to follow as we go? Thank you. Right, as we say, that shows who we are, just to confirm. Just as a brief introduction, you can see fly tipping in North Herts has more than trebled in the last 10 years. That may well be down to some methods of recording, but the figures still show that from a low point in 2012-13, where we had 561 offences, this has massively increased last year to 1,871. The increase last year was 72%, I believe, on the year before. And obviously, a lot of that can be attributed to the early stages of lockdown. We had massive increases month on month following that. Unfortunately, this year's figures, even though the restrictions are being eased, waste sites are reopened, we are still on a similar level to what we were last year. So it hasn't been alleviated by that. Again, fly tipping figures from Waste Services in the last 3 years show that 40% of fly tips that they cleared were in the Hitchwood, Offa and Who areas, which accounts for 967 offences out of just under 2,500. And provisional figures, we've only started really digging down into what we've got from those figures, but out of the 80 offences so far this year in that area, out of 12 that we have got evidence to link to a person or an address, 8 of those 12, that's 66%, relate back to Luton. Thank you, Daryl. If you could put the next slide up for us. Obviously, with the increase in the number of offences, we've also increased, even though we have had no increase in staff. They've been working, as Rebecca said, extra hard in the last few years. And last year we had 27 fixed penalties issued, 6 individuals were prosecuted via the courts, and we issued 10 community resolutions. The community resolution is under the Antisocial Behaviour Act. It's a community protection warning notice. We issue those where we are satisfied that a person is responsible, but we don't have the burden of proof to take them to court. They will be given a notice to advertise, to tell them that we are aware. If it continues, if we find more evidence linking to them, they will be prosecuted under the antisocial behaviour laws rather than the fly tipping laws. And again, so far this year, we've issued a further 12 fixed penalties, 1 court prosecution, and we have increased our community resolutions up to 19 already. Next slide, thank you. The top 5 areas for fly tipping for North Herts in the last 3 years, as I've said earlier, Hitchwood, Offa and Who are 967. The next highest is Chesfield on 170. Arbury has 130. Weston and Sandon 109, and Nebworth has 100. So Hitchwood, Offa and Who, quick calculations, 5 to 6 times more fly tipping than the next highest area, which is the area that backs onto Stevenage at Great Ashby and Gravely and that sort of area. So you can appreciate the problems that we have in your areas. It's massive. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are we doing to try and alleviate and respond to those issues? We have an apprentice that works partly with us and partly with licensing. She has been tasked since she started in March to do far more data analysis than we've ever had before. She looks into all reports of fly tipping. They are mapped on a council mapping system, which I will say is having some teething troubles. It is, I think they're going to change over the system with IT, and it will run far smoother when they go over to the new platforms. But we do the data analysis. We are looking to, similar to police figures, which are put online, we are looking to publish eventually, once we are satisfied it's working correctly, where these are. And it shows hotspot mapping as well. So you can see, and there's a slide later on that will show what we can very basically do. There is far more. You can go down to areas, streets to find out where the fly tipping is. So whilst it gives us a tool to know where we can go, we also send it to partners, so it gets sent to the police, so they know where to target. As I think you'll see later on in the meeting, that one of their priorities is fly tipping. So we will give them an early heads up of where they can put their resources. We have successfully bid for them to deploy wildlife cameras in the area. There have been 4 deployed, but the area is vast. We have no specific hotspot that we would like to say. We get a fly tip here on a weekly basis. We can target that. We do it on the ones that are more likely to occur. So we are a little bit hit and miss on that one. I have given presentations and tried to educate at parish council meetings. I gave a presentation to Offaly and Lily Council. It's just what they can do to help us. There's a system called What 3 Words, which is it's a mapping. It maps 3 meter squares throughout the whole of the world with three words. You put that in, it tells you where it is, to try and hopefully educate people to pinpoint where fly tipping is, because we have lots of triplicate reports on the same one. So that would be something that we can hopefully cut down on. People's CCTV, things like that, if they have evidence of vehicles, what they can produce to us and where we will take it. Social media, we are looking at using Facebook. Much of the offending comes from people that are located via Facebook sites, usually closed sites, which causes us a problem because we have to post on Facebook as our own personal individuals. 2 of my team have very distinctive names, and if individuals wish to track them, it would be quite easy to do. We're working with Herts County Council Fly Tip Working Group to see if they can set up a group, and we have an admin from each authority across Hertfordshire who can then post on these. The idea is to try and trace people who are advertising waste services and politely ask them to put on their waste carrier's license to show that they are legitimate. And if that's the case, then fine, we'll carry on. If not, we'll ask them to remove their post because they're potentially going to be committing offences. We have also JAG, which is the Joint Agency Group, which works with police, fire brigade, Herts County Council and NHS, anybody else who wishes to be a sort of public body on that. We're looking to set up subgroups to now see what we can do. It's again in the very early stages, but Herts County Council Trading Standards have said they'd like to get involved because there are things that they believe that they can do to target fly tipping. Next slide, please. As you could probably tell from an earlier slide, we have evidence that links Luton as a source of our fly tipping. We're trying to get closely liaison with Luton Borough Council. That is more difficult than you will probably imagine. They have their own issues. Their previous arguments have been, well, it's not our problem, it's yours. But they are beginning to understand that it is a joint issue, and they're looking to work closely. A lot of their environmental health department who deal with HMOs, houses of multiple occupancy, a little bit of work around there. Again, we're looking to work with SAFS, which is the Shared Anti-Fraud Service. They have access to NAFIN, apologies for the acronyms. They're the National Anti-Fraud Network. They're a national body that we as a public authority or a local authority can use to try and trace individuals responsible for fly tipping. A lot of the time people will say to us, yes, I got a telephone number and a name off Facebook. Working with NAFIN, they can give us details of who the phone number is registered to, if it's a contract, or it will give us the last 5 phone top-ups, where they were, where they were paid for, credit card details, etc. So that will give us investigative tools. So again, we're in early stages of working with that. Corporate communications publish all our fixed penalty fines that are issued. Again, there'll be a slide in a minute that will just show the sort of thing that comes up. It comes up on our Twitter feeds and other social media. And convictions at court, we do a press release. It gets sent to the local press, and they obviously choose to publish or not. So we will again publish on our websites that we've done it. We're looking to speed up the criminal justice process. In the last 3 years alone, we've managed to get the time taken from investigating the offence to the issuing of a fixed penalty down from an average of 87 days in 2019. It was down to 51 days last year. So we brought in processes where the actual officers who deal with the offences have now been delegated the powers to issue fixed penalties in conjunction with or consultation with myself, so that we can get the fines out much quicker to offenders, so they're not hanging about. And finally, the Sentencing Council. We had a case last year, one of the cases that went to court. We'd issued an individual with a fine, a fixed penalty of £200 initially for what we call a duty of care offence, where they had given their waste to someone to dispose of. It had been fly tipped. The individual was given a fine for £200. They didn't pay. They were given multiple opportunities, including payment by instalment, which we will do for people. Cut a long story short, they went to court. They failed to appear twice. The police arrested them twice. They were fined £40, which is a fifth of the minimum of our fixed penalty. As you can imagine, I was less than impressed. Went to the fly tip working group at Herts County Council, Duncan Jones. He has taken it on board. He is lobbying the Sentencing Council actively. They wrote to them. They have 158 councils who have signed the letter, 10 professional bodies. I know the local MPs have signed. And we are awaiting. They have said it is time for review. They haven't reviewed it since early 2010s. And one of the big things that we are trying to press for is for community sentences to be handed down for fly tipping, which they can't do at the moment. They can only give monetary fines. Average fines in Herts across the board for the last 3 years have all been below the minimum fixed penalty notice. Fines should be for fly tipping offences start at around £3,000 per offence. It's a Band F offence. 600% of the average weekly wage should be fined. Clearly, they're not, and we need the magistrates to come and help us, or to help us to try and crack down on this. Next slide, please. Obviously, we can't do it by ourselves. We need help from the communities, and this is the sort of message we've been putting out to parish councils as to what we can ask of them to do in their publications, and obviously yourselves can help us get the message across. What 3 words I mentioned earlier, the links there, it is not just for fly tipping, it is a absolute amazing website that if you get lost, things like that, you can pinpoint where you are anywhere in the world. We try and promote key messages as much as we can. We do it on our social media around using unlicensed waste carriers, and off the back of that, using our bulky waste service from North Arts Council. £46.04. Don't ask me why it's that figure. That was what's on our website. Up to 6 bulky items for £46. Obviously, again, if you are in receipt of benefits or low income, then I believe that is negotiable. And that is certainly the lowest in the area for bulky waste collections. Again, people want to help. They'll go to a fly tip, they'll have a route through it. That doesn't help us at all, really. In fact, it makes our job more difficult. So we ask people not to interfere with fly tipping, just to report it, and we will take it from there. And again, for them to use the report it page on the North Arts Council website to let us know of any fly tips that they come across. Next slide, please. There's the bits that I mentioned. On the bottom left, you can see the find. That is what goes out onto our social media. It will give the location, the fine, and the date of the fine. The what 3 words, that is their logo. So if you see that one, you know it's theirs. There's lots of logos now trying to get onto the back of them, but that's the official one. And the bottom right shows the wards and where our fly tipping offences. You probably can't see very well. I certainly can't from this distance, but it gives each a colour coding. 20 and above goes to red, so you can see where our red areas are. Green is 0. That is a very simple function of the analysis mapping that the apprentice is doing. You can go far more detail, and she's more than happy to explain to people if they wish to access it. Again, currently we send it to the portfolio holders and the shadow portfolio holder for waste, but again, it's available to anybody if they wish to, and if they want to just drop me an email, I can certainly get Alice to add you to the distribution list. Next slide, please. That's my email address and the two work numbers. If you phone the 01462 number, that diverts anyway through to my mobile. Sometimes people find it easier to phone me on my mobile. And next slide. Oh, last one. Okay. Any questions?
Thank you both for your presentation and coming along and joining us tonight. Obviously, representing Hitchwood, Offa and Who, I'm at the top of that list with the 900, nearly 1,000 fly tips, and actually one landed about 100 meters from my house the other day, which was delightful. It's great to see, after asking for many years, for the fines and the prosecutions to be more widely advertised. It's great to see them starting to pop up on Facebook. I share them all over our ward. However, I do get a lot of feedback, obviously positive, thanking you for your hard work. And I think that needs to be said at the very beginning, that you are a dwindling team. There's not many of you. And we have a very big district with a big problem, as I know is nationwide, but you do work incredibly hard. And I see the enforcement cars driving around, especially our ward, on a very regular basis. I know that Dave especially works very closely with the local farmers and really interacts with our community to try and work as a collective to tackle this. However, there's always a couple of negatives and constructive criticisms. One, there's two that I have said that I will bring forward. One being, why are the fines so low? Because it is actually sometimes cheaper to go and get a skip than go and fly tip. The fine is cheaper than getting a skip. And also the second question would be, why do we not name and shame the individuals on these posts and say where they come from, so that we can really highlight and raise the profile to try and deter people?
First question first. The fines are set by government for our fixed penalty notices. The maximum that we can issue currently is £400 on a fixed penalty, and the minimum they can be reduced to is £120. We have discussed it at the Fly Tip working group across Herts County Council. Ours in North Herts was set at £300. And currently we do find that, thankfully, the majority of them do get paid. We do offer payment terms if people approach us. We don't offer it. If they say they can't pay the fine, they can pay a smaller amount. We will set up an account to do that. But we find that if we are going to up the fines to £400 per offence, then we are likely to get less people paying, and then we have the knock-on effect of, where do we go from there? The only option we have is to take them to court. And as you can see, the courts don't support us. The fines are even lower than what our fixed penalties are. So currently, until we get some sort of steer from the Sentencing Council, we believe that £300 is the best that we can deal with at the moment. Obviously, we review it on a regular basis. And if it was decided across the Fly Tip working group that £400 across the board was going to be the fine, then we would have to potentially fall in line with that. The second one, when we give someone a fixed penalty ticket, the understanding that is there, and that is again from central government, is that if they discharge their liability by paying the fine, they don't get a criminal record. It's not a sanction in that way. We are not allowed to advertise who they are. Obviously, if we take them to court, they are prosecuted in open court. We do the publication, and they will be named and shamed, so long as the newspaper will publish, which I believe most of the time they do. So, yeah, if they are convicted through the courts, they will be named and shamed.
Thank you. And just one supplementary. You come up with these yellow and black advertisements and to promote the fact that you have fined and what you say exactly where the fine was for. Could it be explored that these are put into the comment and things? Because even I know obviously you haven't named and shamed people, and the amounts can be criticised by some who maybe don't know the background, as you've kindly explained. But it would be great to see some of these maybe put into local papers, especially the Luton side of the world, the Luton News and any of their, I can't remember the other one that's up in Stopsley, but I just think anything we can do, I can put them all over social media, but obviously I've only got a reaching of so far. Just putting a little quarter of a page in with these, I think could help deter people.
Madam Chair, it's a fantastic idea. We have discussed what we can do with education for Luton residents, and certainly if we could get the media and the press on side, it would be fantastic. Yeah, one of our actions to work with the Luton Borough Council is to potentially put some sort of messages out to them. But yeah, certainly we will look at contacting their media.
Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Firstly, thank you very much to both of you for coming. I think, yes, I share the concerns of obviously Councillor Frost, because Hitchwood Offal Moor is my ward too, and I have never seen fly tipping going on around me. And I've been reporting it, and I've never had to report it in my 25 years as a councillor, 26 years. This last 12 months is the first time I've actually had to go online and actually put in where I'm sick. I mean, I might have seen fly tipping between Purton and Holwell once in every 5 years, and it was once a month going on. To me, it does seem to have kind of made it eased off a bit. I don't know whether that's because people have finished clearing out their garages, but I think you've highlighted in your presentation that it's high. And something actually concerned me, because I went back to the minutes of our last meeting, and there was on page 6, and there was a comment that said that recent information from the community safety team indicated that reports of fly tipping had decreased, which was in our minutes. And I think that's obviously totally and utterly inaccurate from what you've given us tonight. Reports of fly tipping have not decreased, they're increasing, and they're still going up. You mentioned when you were talking about the sentencing council and MPs and that. So what could we as a council actually do to try and promote more zero tolerance to fly tipping in our district? How can we go about? Do we need to lobby? Who do we need to go to? Because £300, it's not really a penalty for that actually even covers the cost sometimes of clearing up what's been left behind and getting it away. And I have to say, to Yabasa, they do an incredible job, because if you do report it, they are usually out there within 48 hours to take it away. And I know they do that because otherwise, if it's left there, people think, oh, that's a good idea. And you just get more on the site if you don't keep it under control. So, they are doing a great job, but the penalty doesn't seem to be fitting the crime. What can we do with this sentencing council? And the other thing is, do we still have those cameras, and are they working? I don't want to know where they are, because I know that if we have got them, do they get moved around? But you go in certain districts, areas of the district, and you see all the signs up that says cameras in action. Does that work or not? So there's a lot of questions there.
John, if I may, I'll pick up on the first couple, and then I'll if you don't mind addressing the third. Yes, so you're quite right in pointing out the difference at that point in time. I think when you last met, it was reported that there was a decrease in fly tipping incidents, and there was a drop, there was a decline, but what we found, unfortunately, is that has increased since then. So as the figures indicate now, we're looking at a similar level overall compared to the same period this time last year. In terms of the sentencing council, a lot of work, as John's indicated, has been done. It's primarily been driven by the Hearts Waste Partnership, and the letter that was sent to the Sentencing Council very recently was signed, as John said, by 15 other waste partnerships, which covered, as John's already indicated, 158 local authorities. So that's about a third of the local authorities, I think, within England, and a number of professional bodies, including a local government association. So part of that work has been also engaging with the local MPs. In answer to your question in terms of what the local authority can do, I guess it's to continue to promote that message and to reinforce that message in those forums with our MPs, to ensure that we get the response that we want from the Sentencing Council, which is to review the sentencing guidelines so that the fines can be more reflective in relation to the offences that have occurred. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. In relation to the cameras, the issue that we have in the rural areas are that we don't have power supplies for cameras. You will be able to get some absolutely fantastic cameras to combat fly tipping in town centre areas or areas that have got lighting. So we have to rely primarily on wildlife cameras. They are good to a point. They are run on battery, but they are motion activated. So you have to be certain of where you're going to get your evidence from, because a branch blowing in front of the camera will activate it on, off, on, off. The batteries will drain in 24 hours. The police have put some up. There has been no successful result to date with them. The only other option that was advertised to me by one of these CCTV companies is that if we put a self-supporting stand on a road with a movable camera, you may be able to monitor Lily Bottom Road, for example, which is the whole road is a hotspot, but there isn't a particular point along that road that is a problem. So the vastness of the area is the issue that we come across. People often ask about signage. Does that work? Evidence has shown that the signage has a contradictory result to what they aim for. Signage psychologically apparently is called nudging. So if you see a sign and you are a law-abiding citizen about to break the law by letting your dog foul somewhere, and you see the sign, it changes your behaviours. Fly tippers see the signs, think this is obviously a fly tipping spot. I will fly tip here because there are no cameras. Because to put cameras up, they have to get certain authorizations to do it. So it has the flip of what we want them to do. So whilst I know the police have been putting up signs, we are, and David Firth is here, will tell you there is a place at Diamond End that he put the signs up within 24 hours. Someone had done a huge fly tip right underneath them. So that's the problem we face. Plus we then become part of the problem because the signs are up there, people pull them down, throw them on the floor. There are issues, but if anyone has any fantastic ideas, please email me because we'll look at anything.
You're absolutely right along Lily Bottom, and it's very sad when people feel they can actually fly tip an entire skip along Lily Bottom full of stuff that then they added a double mattress on top of it. So yeah, absolutely. We do have signage along Lily Bottom. Some of it I did feel worked for a little bit, but you're right, they then end up on the floor with a fly tip on top of them. Are there any other comments? Councillor Tandy.
Thank you so much, John and Rebecca. Such a great presentation and really informative. I endorse the comments by our Madam Chair and our group leader as well. Well, I've been thinking prevention is better than cure. And I wonder whether you've considered some of the reasons why folk are actually fly tipping in the first place. I know we've had, many councillors here will actually testify. We've had many residents complaining of waste not being collected on time or late, or, I wonder whether there's actually bigger reasons behind this, why fly tipping has actually increased, and have we considered it? Are you addressing it as well in the education that you're doing?
Thank you. Yeah, you're absolutely right in terms of trying to prevent a problem before it is a problem. And as an authority, we do a lot in relation to education. It's our colleagues within the Waste Services Department that lead on that. predominantly, but we also will deliver a number of events, and we'll do a number of promotions, particularly around trying to encourage people to check that how they dispose of their waste is lawful, that they are using a licensed waste carrier. They are checking when they're looking at getting a skip, that the skip company is registered with the Environment Agency. They are looking at when they're doing that little bit of DIY work, and when they are getting their builder in, that their builder, in addition to doing whatever refurbishment they are doing, that they are also licensed to remove the waste that's been created from whatever it is that has been built away and disposed of lawfully. So that, I think, to me, is the biggest thing that we need to raise awareness of, because I think probably everyone is, it's a very emotive subject, and no one likes to see fly tip waste, whether that be in a residential street or in the countryside. I think a lot of law-abiding citizens wouldn't even dream of doing that. But what we need to try and address is the fact that your waste might be disposed of, illegally in that way. And by just doing these simple checks, that's going to help mitigate that risk, and also protect you from potentially being, action being taken against you in relation to a household waste duty of care offence. I hope that's answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm aware that obviously we need to bring this topic to a close. Just a couple of last points. One being a number of people, especially towards the Luton border, they feel that fly tipping has increased since Luton Tip was closed off to maybe North Herts residents, and obviously the use of our tips are a little bit more difficult, some may seem. Have you found that there has been a correlation to tidy tips being closed off to our residents? And are we doing anything about maybe liaising with Luton to try and get LU2 postcodes back allowed into their tidy tip?
Thank you. Yes, I mean, absolutely. I think it was, evident at the beginning of the pandemic, where there were lots of factors involved. I think, as had been alluded to, lots of DIY work, lots of waste being generated within homes, and also aligned to that, there was the initial closure of household waste recycling centres. Clearly, that was a factor, I think, as along, with a number of other factors that contributed to this particular issue. Certainly, our colleagues at Herts County Council, who lead on the Herts Waste Partnership, they did look at whether there was a correlation between the closures, certainly of our neighbouring household waste recycling centres, and they were happy that there wasn't a significant impact, but absolutely, the closure of nearby household waste recycling centres, I think there is certainly a correlation there.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Just as one final question. What is the cost to the council for fly tipping? Have we got a figure? in the clearing up part of it, all the time and money that we're spending, just a ballpark figure. I'm not asking you to say it's £35,235.
Yeah.
It's around about 20,000 or whatever it is.
That's something that will be picked up by our waste services colleagues, but that's certainly something that we can provide and furnish you with outside of this meeting.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I mean, from my background, I used to work for the police. I think John used to work with the police as well. When there's something happening in a particular area, they put decoy vehicles in there. And so if you don't want to see speeding, you put a decoy vehicle in there, you just put a vehicle on that road, nobody speeds because there's a police car there. Is there enough money? Are we spending out enough money that we can use a default vehicle on the main arterial routes coming in? I know it's a lot of time for somebody to drive it out there every day and park it up with all liveried up, but it might just stop a certain amount of it coming in. Somebody sees a vehicle, turns around and goes back again. I'm not going to say it's going to stop everything in North Arts, but it might be in a particular area. If you had one vehicle, maybe, I mean, I'm not talking we're spending £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 on a vehicle. We just need a van with liveried up to say North Arts District Council acting in the community sort of thing. I just wondered if we're spending out that much money, is it worth investing in maybe a default vehicle to see what happens, see if it reduces it in a particular area?
And sorry, on that thought, Councillor Moody, you said about the cost of someone driving it, the manpower of driving it out there. I'm fairly sure that with especially Dave's contacts with all the farmers, I'm sure if they smiled sweetly, and I'm sure if I looked at my brother-in-law, someone would house it around there, because I think the quad bike, this was looked into with the quad bike about possibly housing it on a farm so that it didn't have to move too far.
In the village?
Yeah.
Somebody's going to drive into the main arterial route, see the bit, right, I'm not going to go down there, I'm going to go somewhere else. It might just push one or two back over the border. And if it's cost effective to do it, then is it something we can look at?
Councillor Moody, I'm more than happy to discuss outside rather than take up any more time. And for anybody, if they'd like to contact me with any suggestions, we can look at it. I think we find that majority, and people won't be surprised to hear this, majority of the offences are committed overnight. So when there are no council employees working, there are very few, if any, police officers out in that neck of the woods. They just have carte blanche. So, yeah, I'm absolutely happy to look at anything, any suggestions people come up with to see what we can do to alleviate some of this blight.
John and Rebecca, I know we've kept you for an awful long time on this Thursday night, but thank you. It's been really informative. Once again, I did sit in on John's presentation to Offaly Parish Council, which again had so much information and has really helped, because it is a question that comes up almost on a weekly basis to us. So thank you ever so much for your time. And obviously John's presentation, if we're able to, we can give out your details and your presentation if any of the parish councils want it to share with their councillors. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry, just a word of caution on that. It will only be as valid as, well, last week. Yeah, so it will change in 6 months' time. The figures will be totally different. But yeah, absolutely, no problem.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 8, the Hitchin Rural Safer Neighbourhood Report. The information note entitled Hitchin Rural Safer Neighbourhood Report of the Hertfordshire Constabulary has been provided to members. Is there any discussion on the report? I think I'll start with one point. I've been in contact with Sergeant Guy Westwood and Sergeant Nelms recently due to their police officers maybe being less than helpful in our area. I'll start this by saying that 99.9% of the time, the police in our area are incredibly helpful, and they're thorough and they're diligent and they work incredibly hard. And we thank you for the hard work that both them and our enforcement officers do. When I had 8 or 9 members of the same village come forward to say, we've had a problem with this police officer, nothing major, I went to Sergeant Westwood, and both him and Sergeant Nelms were instantly responsive. They brought this officer in, they listened to everyone's concerns, and they did put forward extra training for this officer just to make sure that it didn't happen again. So I just want to place on file our thanks for their work and everything that they do in our area. Any other councillors? No? Okay, please do thank them for the report as well. Moving on to agenda item number 9, section 106, the annual update for 2020-2021, and over to Simon Ellis to present.
Thank you, Chair. I've got an apology to make first of all. Appendix 5 was incorrect. I think I was flicking through that this afternoon and it's totally irrelevant to you, this committee. It's a Royston rural update. I have actually sent round the relevant appendix just this evening. So you do have that in front of you. And if you want to, I can go through some of it later. That's the outstanding funds available for all the villages. Even though Councillor Moody was quite eagle-eyed and caught one in Offaly that slipped into the available funds. So that I've just sent that round anyway. So first of all, what's been happening this year? Well, the main things that have been happening are that we've been producing our infrastructure funding statement. We've produced the first one in December 2020. That's a government requirement to produce an annual statement of everything that happens in relation to infrastructure funding in section 106, and we have to fill in a form and get it all correct, and we've done that now. And the next one will be published in December 2021. The other thing that's happened is in March 2021, Cabinet decided not to invest in producing a community infrastructure levy for the district, because officers' advice, which was accepted by Cabinet, was that we needed to use the spare funds we had in planning to fund what we're describing as the master planning project for the major strategic sites that would be delivered upon the adoption of the local plan, if that were to happen. In terms of Southern Rural, as you can see from the tables that you have had, there's very few new agreements that are being reached in developments because, as I say in the report, they only apply to schemes of more than 10 dwellings, and there just haven't been enough planning permissions to do that. But there is one at Odyssey Health Club that you'll see as a new agreement that's delivered quite significant funds for the NHS, play space, open space. That's in there. But what you're going to see over the next few years is fewer agreements, but the ones that you will see will be bigger agreements, because time will come about where some of these large developments will get planning permission, and it'll be those very targeted agreements with quite significant funds in them. Similarly to payments received, you can see some of those in there. There's some quite significant payments we've received over the year in relation to the NHS, and that relates to the LS1 scheme, which is one scheme that was granted permission recently. Live funds to be allocated. I've sent around that table, as I said, just recently. Future reports, Chair, what I'm going to do next year, I've mentioned this to all the area committees, is because the sort of accounting exercise is getting a little bit tricky in terms of there's so few funds available in terms of the discretionary pots. And what I'm going to do next year is give more an in the round update. So explain some of the things about master planning, about implementation, about how we manage open space, things like that. So give a little bit more of a commentary on what we're doing with 106 in trying to be creative rather than just looking at the accountancy exercise. So I'll do that in future years, Chair, or certainly next year. But that's my updates, Chair, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Simon. Yes, I do think going forward, any update on how to manage open spaces and more information that people, especially parish councils and anyone that may be watching this online, rather than just the figures and whatnot, would be very useful to everyone. Councillors, do we have any comments? No? Thank you for addressing us this evening and providing the report and sending out the amendments. Okay. We're going to the vote. The recommendations for this are that members note the content of this report provided by Simon, That members agree that a report shall continue to be presented on an annual basis to the area committee, which sets out full records of all Section 106 activity for the preceding financial year, and which reflects changes in legislation and practice. And also, we are recommended that, other than where a contribution has been negotiated for a specific purpose or project, ward members of the area where the Section 106 obligation or unilateral undertaking funding is generated, and the area committee be consulted prior to funding being allocated away from that area. Members must note that the discretionary funds are rapidly diminishing and will not be replaced under current legislation and practice for reasons that are set out in the report. Can I have a proposer? Yep, and a seconder. Thank you. And can we move to the vote?
Thank you, Chair. Those recommendations are carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, agenda item number 10, ward and outside organisations members report. Do any members have verbal reports regarding ward matters or representation on outside organisations? Councillor Nash.
Thank you. Yeah, so Nebworth Festival Committee has been kind of started up again, and so it's very much involving all of the community groups in there. Previously, it had run adrift, let's say, so it's been reinvigorated with new team members, and they're working towards the Christmas light switch on the 19th of November at the moment, and we've got a festival week in June. The Twinning Association had held a Bastille Day, because they do a lot of fundraising, and this committee has granted them money in the past, had a Bastille Day dinner that had been put off because of COVID. They also had a successful Baxter Balmoral talk at the park, and that was actually opened up to everybody. Anybody could go along to that as well. And then they've got a quiz, a fundraising quiz, also on this weekend on Saturday, which is always a sellout. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nash, for informing us. Councillor Strong.
Thank you. Members would probably remember that we did some grant funding to St Paul's Walden, to the, I can't remember what they were grouped, the ones in the wall garden. What were they called? I can't remember. Within the Walls, yes. We gave them a grant funding, and they did invite us for afternoon tea. And I went along to see their project and what they were doing. It was a lovely Sunday afternoon. Amazing. I mean, I've driven down that road, past that garden so many times, and not known what's gone on the other side. But yes, it was very nice to meet them. They had some of the those that had actually been on the and participated in the course, who were talking about their experience and just had a walk around. Yeah, it was a great afternoon. But I just thought I'd say I did accept the invitation.
Thank you, Councillor Strong. Anyone else? No? Okay. Can I remind councillors that the next meeting is on the 9th of December. It will be the last one before Christmas. I know, dare we say, Christmas is not cancelled. And with that, I will bring the meeting to a close. Thank you everyone for coming.